you think that incarcerating homeless people is going to solve the issue of homelessness?
If you refuse, and if you violate the law, and this is what I tell people all the time, if you refuse and you violate the law, we're going to have to arrest you.
Nancy Pelosi, right? It was her job to do that.
Chain of command is going to start off with the president.
Well, obviously, you guys, have a certain agenda that you're trying to probe.
Hey guys, welcome to CD Media. My name is Colby.
My name is David.
So what you guys just saw was a couple of snippets from our conversation inside the GOP Duval Club. It was actually a really interesting time. We actually weren't allowed to film inside, however, we did get a lot of really good conversations. One of which with the guest speaker, Sheriff TK Waters. Why don't you tell him a bit about that, David?
Yeah, so the Jacksonville Sheriff himself was there, TK Waters. We did get the opportunity to interview him, which we didn't expect, but it was a great interview nonetheless. We did touch on some homelessness issues, and we did touch on Amendment 3, which is recreational marijuana legalization in the state of Florida.
Right, and then after that we had some other conversations with some conservatives. Unfortunately, we had some technical problems, but we did get one really, really good conversation with this guy named Jeremiah. Unfortunately, this guy was a bit of a pinata of misinformation. I mean, anytime we poked him on any issue, more misinformation would just come flying out like candy, right? And we'll be sure to show you plenty of that. The full interviews of both these conversations will be coming here just a little bit. Me and Dave will be interjecting with our opinions if these guys happen to get anything wrong or maybe something that needs a bit more context.
So, hey, my name's Colby Bell.
Hey, Colby, TK Waters.
Excellent to meet you. I heard your speech inside, and I was thoroughly impressed, though I do have two questions for you, both of them on the local level.
Right.
So my first one was regarding House Bill 1365. I was wondering if how you feel about some people calling this issue a Band-Aid issue, a small fix over the larger problem. Do you think that incarcerating homeless people is going to solve the issue of homelessness or further encourage them to stop doing it? Or do you think that do you also think that's a good use of police resources, or do you think there might be better alternatives still in the future?
I think there are alternatives, right?
Right.
The last alternative, the last part of the whole thing is the arrest, us being involved. But there's going to be issues, there's going to be social issues that are being dealt with by the city throughout the process, saying, listen, let us take you someplace where you can be safe and you can start your recovery process, right? All that's going to happen first, and I'll be sure to make sure that we ask for that and make sure that you can do that. But if you refuse, and if you violate the law, and this is what I tell people all the time, if you refuse and you violate the law, we're going to have to arrest you, and then let the justice system work its magic.
All right, pause, stop the video. The last thing that they're going to do is arrest them. But it seems to me, and we've read the bill and we've gone over it, but it seems to me that the first thing they're going to do is ask you to get off the street. And if you refuse, they're going to arrest you. It doesn't seem like the first step is to get them into a shelter and get them the help they need. It's if they refuse, you're getting handcuffs.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, everything that Sheriff is saying right now is completely unsupported by the facts of this situation. And unfortunately, on this House bill here, you might be able to see that nothing of what he's talking about is actually on the bill. And you see, the thing with that is, he's talking about how he's going to make sure that this is the first step. Why not have any amount of support for that inside the bill? There's nothing that guarantees homeless people have to get mental health treatment, drug treatment, or even health care. Nothing of House Bill 1365 guarantees these protections to homeless people. The only thing it guarantees is if they refuse to go to one of these camps, they can and will be arrested.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a house, so here's a criminal record. I mean, that's not going to help.
That'll make it easier for you to get a job.
That's not going to help the issue at all. And the real problem here is that we're making sleeping on the street illegal, when really we should be making efforts to give homeless people the help that they need, rather than putting them in handcuffs if they refuse to go with the office.
So the second part of House Bill 1365 goes in a little bit to documentation for a proper camping area, and says these people have about a year in order to figure out housing. Do you think that a year is enough time for these people to figure out what to do with their lives, from a situation of potentially being drug addicted and homelessness to having enough to afford an apartment?
Yeah, I think that's it's a good long time. I do know there's a part of it that has something to do with the cities and municipalities finding places for those folks to go in the meantime. So, listen, not every person that's homeless is mentally ill. Not every person that's homeless But we recognize and we empathize with that. So now what we want to do is we're going to make sure that they have a pathway going forward only if they refuse to obey the law. You have to understand. And because you're homeless doesn't make you exempt, right? You have to obey the rules. You have to obey the laws. And if you decide at that point you don't want to obey the law, then we'll step in and do what we should do as law enforcement.
That's actually pretty insane. To think that a year inside late-term America, where we are right now, every Republican complains about what over anything else? The economy! It's terrible! It's unfair! Yet a year's enough time to go from drug-addicted and homeless to with a stable job in an apartment? This is laughable. To say you have a year's enough time to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I mean, he even had to jamble and try to construct an argument in his head after he heard it. I doubt he believes it himself.
Yeah, a year is apparently plenty of time to go from homeless to having a job and an apartment and having a steady life. I don't think any reasonable person that's ever been in that position thinks that that is agreeable. Yeah, I think another important thing to note, Colby, is one of the biggest problems with homelessness is having identification and being able to prove who you are in order to be able to obtain access to shelters, obtain access to social care and welfare in the country.
Or even obtain access into this new camping procedure as a part of House Bill 1365. You see, if people don't have ID, they won't even be able to sign up for the prospect of getting into these camps. The statistics are relatively hard to find for this. The federal average is anywhere between 10.7% to 30% of homeless people lack identification. If it's anywhere even in between of that, around 15% of homeless people might be lacking IDs. That means we would be just jailing 15% of our population, or our homeless population rather, which I think is a giant problem. And if you can't see why that's a problem, I think you need to go look at the stats and just see how many people that would affect.
Yeah, just another way to show that this bill is problematic in a lot of ways.
And, again, it does not address the root problems of homelessness.
No. Throw them in jails. We don't want to see them.
Gotcha. And then I only have one more. It's again on everyone's fan favorite. It's Amendment 3. So my thought process is there's a lot of police resources that could be freed up by the use of getting rid of the crime against marijuana. There's probably, I don't even know how many times you guys get called over a case that's probably a couple of kids smoking weed or something of the sort. Where there is also dangerous criminals. I think I heard you talk inside about how a lot of times when you're busting these guys, they also have fentanyl and other illicit substances. But at the same time, for every one of those, there is 2 or 3 people that are not doing that, just kids with large quantities of weed. And do you think that these kids should be, potentially facing up to 10 to 15 to 20 years in prison, depending on what they're holding?
First of all, I've been doing this for 33 years. I've never seen a person, I don't care what you hear, I don't care what you read, I've never seen a person get 10 or 15 or 20 years for marijuana.
Even for like wax or controlled substances, like that's THC concentrates. A lot of those laws consider those to be a controlled substance.
In Florida?
Yes.
In Jacksonville,
I
Florida?
believe so anyway. You might know better than me.
No, I have not seen anyone get 10, 15, or 20 years for marijuana.
Heard that. Thank you so much for your time, my man. TK, it was a pleasure.
Absolutely, man.
Yes, thank you.
Brother, I don't care what you've seen. I don't care what you've read. I've been doing this for 33 years, brother. And nobody's gotten 10 to 20 years for a simple weed charge.
Unfortunately, I've brought the conservative kryptonite. The facts.
Oh, buddy boy, look at that. We've got a 90-year conviction for a simple weed charge. Now, granted, he did have a lot, but it was a nonviolent weed charge, and he served 30 years of that sentence.
And again, all that's to say, he's claiming that a bunch of crazy things. One, he's claiming that he's never seen an arrest that is this long. It's just simply untrue. The next thing is he goes on, he didn't actually say this a ton inside the interview. We still interviewed him a bit about it. We talk about how he said that most of the drug deals that he ends up stopping end up having fentanyl inside their cars as well as the weed. And it's nowhere even close to that. You see that there's more than 200,000 weed arrests every single year, and there's only about 19,000 fentanyl arrests. So to act like every single kid with a little bit of weed that's selling pot to his friends also has a stash of fentanyl is not only disingenuous, but it's a dangerous idea that ends up making us more against the very concepts of drug. And this is another thing that is very normal out of the Republican playbook.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we know the war on drugs was not a success. That's no secret nowadays. So, I mean, the fact that we're still debating about weed legalization when so many other states have done it successfully, it's a little ridiculous.
Hey guys, so what you're about to see is a conversation with a guy that we had also at the convention with a guy named Jeremiah. We talked to him a little bit about House Bill 1365. However, he didn't know too much about it. He didn't really have his opinion fully cemented, so we decided not to use that inside the video. However, we did talk to him about some other stuff. Why don't you tell him about it, David?
Yeah, so we got to talk about January 6th, voter fraud, whether it was an insurrection or not. Lots of crazy stuff in this interview. Stay tuned.
This is more of a federal question. We're going back to everyone's favorite election, the year 2020. So my question is, how did you feel about VP Mike Pence's decision not to back Trump's decision to return the vote to the House? Do you think that he did the right thing as a constitutionalist, or do you think that he should have stuck with his guns and stuck with Trump?
Well, there were a lot of questions about the validity of the election. Definitely it was the way the system is set up right now. There's a reason that every other country, civilized country, say France recently had an election, that they all do paper ballots, right? Single, 1 or 2 days, paper ballots, and that's that, right?
Wow, here we go again, ladies and gentlemen. Election fraud. It was rigged from the beginning. You heard it here first.
Yeah, and not only that, provably false claims right after, definitely parroted right out of Donald Trump, and it looks like I might actually just have something in my old case file.
Oh,
look at that! I got some facts for
The
him!
facts, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, as you can see, the U.S. is not the only country to do this type of mail-in balloting. It includes Canada, Germany, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Poland, South Korea, Switzerland, and even the United Kingdom. He's saying that no other civilized countries allows this. Is Canada uncivilized? Is the United Kingdom uncivilized? How about Poland? All of these countries with great election track records. So to try to act that one mail-in ballots are somehow making our election less secure, the same article that we show you on the fact sheet will actively disprove that. And not only that, it goes in to show that the only time it's been used for anything illegitimate with presidential elections, it was by conservatives. So again, I think that this point is provably false in more than one way.
Yeah, for sure. And we need to think in terms of the context of the year 2020. We all know what was happening, and we all know, for good reason, why people were mailing in their ballots that year.
It was COVID. Yeah, I mean, let's not brush around it. It's COVID. There was a giant pandemic, and people were terrified to go outside. Of course we're going to use mail-in ballots for this. How else are you going to guarantee that you get the votes that you want without endangering your civilians?
Yeah.
Let's keep on listening.
So our system definitely has its concerns. A lot of Americans are concerned about it. I'm one of them that was concerned that it wasn't done, on the most up and up. With what his, again, Vice President Pence did what he thought was right. You got to respect that. It's ultimately in the end, it's definitely identified some issues that the Constitution addresses, but he made his decision on what he needed to do, and respect him for that. But in the end, I think there's definitely a lot of concerns out there, and especially with how things leading up to the election, including what Mark Zuckerberg just released his letter, saying that he was pressured to do things and to suppress information that ultimately might have changed. A lot of people said they would have voted differently, and there are definitely a lot of just the way that the other states maybe are counting things. Thankfully, I think in Florida we do a pretty good job with how our elections are. It goes back to 2000, right, with the whole hanging Chad thing.
Right.
And they've done a lot to try to make sure, but still, I think there's definitely even better ways that can be done here. And I know that there are those, including representatives in our state house and Senate that are looking to do things to try to get us back to much more of a secure and fair election system. So hopefully we don't have to go through that again.
So you would say you understand Mike Pence's point, but you wish that he would have maybe stuck with the validity of the elections a little bit harder and focused more on that issue.
I think there could have been, some more sort of, work done. And again, it was just such a crazy time in the things that were going on. Again, we've got a good, I'd say at least half the country, almost half the country that was questioning and didn't feel like, our votes were valid because of some things that were happening, and there was some evidence, and, that just was sort of, pushed under, but ultimately he did what he had to do, and again, hindsight's always, I guess you could say it's 2020, but, I think there's definitely more that could be done to, sort of ensure that we have free and fair elections, in this country.
So my last and final question is a bit of a hypothetical. The question essentially is this. what if Democrats did everything inside the 2024 election that Republicans did in 2020? That's trying to end the vote early, that's trying to use, Kamala to certify her own position as president, and that is, also causing a rally afterwards, and then, it develops into a coup where they wait 3 hours before doing anything about the coup while pressuring other lawmakers. Would you say that is a coup from the Democratic side, or that's fair, that's ball game, that's fair play?
Well, it definitely was not a coup if you're referring to January 6th, which I think is where you're trying to go with the way you're phrasing your question. So it definitely was not that way. It was tried to look to a certain way because, again, as you highlighted, the Democratic Party had a certain agenda, and ultimately there's things that they want to try to force, upon everybody through what they were trying to do. So, ultimately what is setting up. I think there's concerns that they're trying to do the same type of thing again. I'm just saying, from the Democratic Party and what they're looking to do, leveraging the FBI and other entities to try to enforce one side of hey, if you're a certain political party, you don't have a voice, we're going to cancel you, we're going to shut you down, we're going to lock you away, right? When in fact, if you look at the video, which hopefully you guys have looked at all the video that's been released from, that hey, the police were pretty much like, come on in, right?
I'll disagree with you there. The first people that broke through lines were indeed violent. They even assaulted police officers with tear gas. Some of them were stomping police officers. The first person to enter into the Capitol, Ashley Babbitt, broke through a window. She was not let in with the rest of them, and that was only because the riot had progressed to a point where there was...
police officers were killed during that event, right? And again, they
the couple were really injured, though.
Injured, right? But again, we were told from the media and from the government all this stuff that was happening. And it's again, the evidence there doesn't support it. Again, as you guys hopefully know, the President Trump did say we'll send the National Guard. Of course, the people,
how long ago?
Others.
It took 3 hours for him to do something, and the whole time he was pressuring lawmakers.
Nancy Pelosi, right? It was her job to do that.
Chain of command's going to start off with the president.
Well, obviously, you guys, have a certain agenda that you're trying to probe.
Hey, Jeremiah, you've done a lot of talking, so it's our turn.
Right.
Now, he says about Zuckerberg and a letter, and we looked into it, and it turns out that letter was about COVID misinformation and memes, and who cares about that? It has nothing to do with the election. He says that people would have changed their vote. I disagree. It had to do with COVID.
Yeah, and on the same note, you guys might be able to notice when re-listening to this guy's conversation for the actual video, he doesn't ever answer any of our questions. He bounces around and otherwise tries to weasel his way out of every single talking point that's even slightly negative for the conservative worldview. I think it's pretty clear that he is gish-galloping. He is throwing out every possible thing to try to get the conversation off. He even mentions hanging Chad inside the 2000 election, which I actually thought was kind of odd. Why would you mention maybe one of the most contentious elections in American history, other than the 2020 election, to try to prove that Florida's so good at election verification when we didn't even decide to verify inside the 2000 election? My whole point there is it was a vote decided by less than 600 people. We refused to do a recount then. Does that really tell you that we're super hard stance about when it comes to election security? It doesn't to me. And to try to throw out this claim, he's relying on the fact that we don't know it, so we have to just refute 500 things. It's very Trump-esque.
Yeah, and going into the Trump, he's claiming that the entire election was rigged from the start. That's what Trump has been saying. He claims that every election is rigged.
Even 2016.
Yeah, even 2016. So, while I will give him this, it was a close election. I think these are two different things. The 2020 election was won by more than 600 votes, obviously.
Right.
And
more than millions.
Well, I'm assuming with your podcast or whatever you're
Yeah, it's a YouTube channel.
So, and again, hey, look, there is a lot of this come to light since then, right? And again, you have to look at, and hopefully this is the folks that are watching this are going to do the same things that I think you're encouraging everybody to do, which is go look into the research, see what's happening, look at both sides, and realize that there is definitely an agenda that's being pushed through, the mainstream media, through the government, through the FBI and other entities that is definitely not in favor of a conservative viewpoint of the world. And so
all right.
That's ultimately what we're dealing with, and hopefully you guys are open to having a good conversation. That hey, not everybody has to agree with everybody's opinion, but we can have a conversation like this, and hopefully that's allows us to have this fair, free, safe elections that we all want.
Yeah, that's the whole point we made the channel. Just good discussions. Yeah. Again, to sort of end off here, that question was: assume Democrats did everything that Republicans did inside that same election. I mean, you can disagree on some of the specifics or whatever, but for the most part, let's assume that all the main bullet points are there. So we have Kamala trying to certify her own election. We have the Democrats trying to stop the vote early, sowing doubt in mail-in ballots beforehand.
Well, I'll just go back. There's mail-in ballots should not even be an option, right? Again, no other country, civilized country, does that. It's one day, it's a holiday, you vote, you go out, everybody votes, and they have it counted that day, right? Look at France, which just went through, right? And there are so many other examples where we don't need to have things that we have, because mail-in ballots just have one. They're so easy to cheat with.
I would disagree.
Do you think mail-in ballots were important in the year of 2020 with the coronavirus?
Well, again, it depends on, again, how you think and how you view that whole thing was handled, right? Were we really, when it was really a bad case of the flu, it was forced on it, it was used as leverage to ultimately get a certain agenda.
People were still worried regardless, though.
They were worried.
Especially liberals, right? And that's the reason that they might have favored mail-in balloting instead of going in on person.
And that's again, that is what we have to work with. But again, there are so many things that can happen with that. It is actually a lot easier, right, to both that and, of course, the machines that we've got, the systems that are in place, right, that are actually not as secure. Any system like that can be hacked. It's been proven. It's been shown. And so I think hey, if the election's that important, we should all be able to get out and get to the place on the day of the election and cast our vote, right? And there's things that we can do. Like I said, make it a holiday. Everybody can get out and vote.
100% agree.
Right. Yeah. So again, mail-in ballots. Yeah, absentee ballots. I remember back when it was for if you're in the military or overseas. That's what it was for. I've used it before myself, right? I don't feel that
I used it in the last elections.
Yeah, and I've previously, but now I'm like, there's just so many things that can go awry with that. It's just, I think it's much better to be there and to do it in person and ensure that it's done right. And again, there's things we can do, and I think the states are realizing that. And thankfully, the states still have control over how our elections are done. Some states are better than others, and I guess we'll see how that's all going to play out here now. But it's important that we all get involved. My wife's a poll worker. I'm going to be a poll watcher this year, so that definitely can, ensure that things are being done, on the up and up.
Well, awesome, man. It was a pleasure talking to you. And your name one more time? Jeremiah.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure, my man. Thank you.
Thanks.
David, and
The COVID virus was the flu, apparently, according to Jeremiah. So we looked at the numbers here, and the numbers are not in Jeremiah's favor. Not at all. So over 1 million Americans died as a result of COVID from the year 2020 to 2024. Now, if we compare that to the number of deaths annually in the United States for the flu, it's 36,000. You do a little bit of rough math and you find that that usually in a 4-year span, 144,000 Americans die from the flu. That's nowhere near over 1 million. Right. So, I mean, it's peddling misinformation, which is this guy's spiel, apparently.
I was actually just about to say the same thing. It is definitely his MO as he goes from one line of misinformation to the next. He goes seamlessly into the voting machine. The voting machine stuff is more than clear. Fox News got sued by Dominion because of peddling out misinformation, both through their pundits like Tucker Carlson, who actually quit because of these positions, and he no longer wanted to have to lie to his audience, as well as pushing out complete falsehoods and conspiracy theories all throughout the election. Dominion put up more than $1 billion suit at first that Fox started, understandably, shitting bricks. So they immediately settled out of court for $800 million. I don't know about you. You probably couldn't get me to settle for that amount of money unless I knew I wasn't going to get a better deal any other way.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear. You don't settle out for over $800 million.
Almost a bill.
Unless you know you're wrong, And that's why they did it, ultimately, I think.
And then, again, we have a couple other quick points. He says, mail-in ballots make it easier to cheat. Not really. It's proven wrong. The same article that we used earlier on our little fact sheet, we'll go over it. Yeah, actually, it does make elections just as secure as normal. Inside the U.S., it's only ever had 5 instances of fraud, 3 of which were done by conservatives. So if you really want to push boundaries here, you could really say that it's the conservatives that are potentially using it for fraud. He also goes into a little bit about how he's even used mail-in ballots, which is another common conservative thing. It's okay with me, but it's bad when thee. Yeah, so you could use mail-in ballots so long as you couldn't make it to the day, like so many thousands of other Americans did that were maybe even potentially scared of COVID, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all that we went over today was conservatives talking about homelessness and how you have a year to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. We don't care if you go to jail. We talked about Amendment 3. We don't care if you go to jail for enjoying your recreational substances. On the federal level, they seem just as clueless. We go over the multitude of different amounts of misinformation about Jan 6, and these guys don't even want to answer questions about it.
No. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. These videos do take a lot of work for us, a lot of editing. But Colby, tell us about the next one that'll be coming up.
Yeah, man. So we went to a Filipino-American conservative club down inside Jack's. It was awesome. We talked to a lot of people there. We had some excellent conversations. Be sure to stick around for that one because it is going to be a banger of a video.
Yeah, a little bit of drama in it too, but you guys will see next time. Stay tuned, like and subscribe.
Bye, guys.